Scott Jacob McMillan entered the world in Pennsylvania on January 26, 2011, born to Jillian Tate and Lauren McMillan. Though the couple had shared years together, they were never married. At the time of Scott's birth, his older brother, known only as R, was 4 years old. Scott, affectionately called Scottie, was striking with his fiery red hair, piercing blue eyes, and an innocent smile that melted hearts. His paternal aunt, Tara, often remarked on how much he resembled his father. She remembered him as a joyful infant who adored his older sibling. Jillian described Scott as utterly adorable, her little man. From his maternal aunt, Kim, came tender words, dubbing him her little scooter pop, a beautiful, sweet, and innocent boy. Scottie's world was filled with simple delights, an affection for Thomas the Tank Engine, a fondness for the color green, and a love for cuddles, kisses, and tickle fights. His laughter often rang out as he sang along in the back seat of Aunt Kim's car. Jillian's excitement was palpable when she discovered she was expecting another son. On September 25, 2010, she shared an ultrasound image online, expressing heartfelt anticipation to meet her baby boy. Months later, another ultrasound post followed, echoing her eager hopes for meeting her adorable little boy. Despite more than 4 years together, tensions simmered between Jillian and Lauren by the time Scottie was born. Lauren was notably absent during Scottie's birth and did not accompany Jillian and the newborn home from the hospital. Instead, it was Aunt Kim who took charge, bringing them both to her residence. Jillian and her sons remained at Aunt Kim's house for some time after Scottie's arrival. She frequently shared photos of her newborn on social media. However, Philadelphia Magazine later revealed Jillian maintained multiple social media accounts under various names. Many posts depicted her enjoying nights out. Around this period, she formed a friendship with Shannon Taylor, who described Jillian as a normal, goofy, and funny woman trying to balance motherhood with her social life. Despite the challenges, Jillian found moments to go out. She even listed her religion online as PLUR, a term among ravers meaning peace, love, unity, and respect. In March 2012, Jillian and Lauren were spotted dancing together at a rave. Yet by late 2013, their relationship dissolved, and Lauren relocated to Overland Park, Kansas. Following the split, Lauren's family saw little of the boys, though Tara, Scottie's aunt, kept up with updates through Jillian's social media posts. Tara noted that Jillian often shared photos and seemed deeply devoted to her children. Tara also recounted how her parents had supported the couple financially during their relationship. Once on her own, Jillian struggled to provide for her sons and occasionally aired her financial woes online. In a desperate move, Jillian posted an online ad seeking a sugar daddy, naming both Scottie and R, seemingly unaware of the risks that exposed her children to danger. Yet her connection did not come from online strangers. Instead, fate brought Jillian and Gary Lee Fellenbaum III together at a Walmart where they both worked. Gary's profile was complicated, married to Amber Fellenbaum with an 11-month-old daughter, but their marriage was unraveling. Though still living under the same roof in a dilapidated trailer, Gary and Amber were in the midst of divorce proceedings. Gary was a large man, around 275 pounds, known for a volatile temper. Jillian's new partner was anything but ideal. His quick anger, low income, rundown living conditions, and ongoing marriage painted a troubling picture. Despite these red flags, Jillian and Gary felt an immediate, intense connection. Within days of meeting, Gary moved Jillian and her children into the mobile home on Hope Lane, Weston Township, where Amber and their daughter also lived. Jillian's older son, R, was enrolled in kindergarten at Rainbow Elementary, but she failed to notify the school of their new address. Any initial calm in early October quickly gave way to a grim reality. Gary demanded respect and, when he felt it was lacking, resorted to physical punishment, striking both boys with an open hand. Jillian described Gary as manipulative, keeping her sleep deprived, allowing barely an hour's rest each night. Around this time, Taylor, an old friend, encountered Jillian at Walmart and was struck by how rough she appeared, neglecting herself after just 2 weeks with Gary. Mid-October 2014 marked a turning point when Jillian ceased sending R to school. The home's atmosphere darkened further as the boys were confined to a room for extended stretches, forced to relieve themselves only when unable to hold it any longer. They concealed all signs of their bodily functions to avoid further punishment. Gary's abuse escalated from open-handed hits to closed-fist punches and beatings with objects such as wooden spoons and a frying pan. R quickly grasped that resistance only intensified Gary's fury. He learned to remain still and silent, hoping to evade further harm. Young Scottie, however, too small to understand, continued crying and squirming. This made Scottie an even easier target. On chilling occasions, Gary hung the boys upside down by their feet to inflict more brutal beatings. Jillian, the boy's own mother, inflicted even greater harm. She actively participated in the beatings, joining Gary in punishing the boys and even laughing during the assaults. Concern grew as R's absences mounted without explanation. The school staff reached out repeatedly, calling Jillian, sending letters, and eventually conducting a home visit to the last known address. Had they been able to see the boys then, the bruises and cuts covering R and Scottie would have been undeniable evidence of the horrors unfolding behind closed doors. Authorities had managed to intervene and offer help, but a crucial detail was overlooked. Jillian Tate had failed to update her new address after moving. As a result, a warning note was left taped to the door of the family's former residence. By early November, the violence on Hope Lane had sharply intensified. Though the exact sequence remains unclear, the days following November 2nd marked an unrelenting nightmare. Gary Lee, Fellenbaum III, escalated his cruelty, devising new instruments of torture for the children. Among them was a homemade cat-o'-nine-tails whip, crafted from thick cords bound tightly with electrical tape. He also scavenged a battered metal curtain rod and a strip of aluminum, repurposing them as weapons. To protect his own hands, he wrapped the grips with tape, but the striking ends remained jagged and unforgiving. Both Gary and Jillian Tate wielded these brutal tools against the boys. However, Gary's wrath was primarily directed at Scott Jacob McMillan. His younger brother, R, was forced to witness the torment, and at times Gary compelled the older boy to join in the abuse, striking his little brother. The relentless beatings ravaged Scottie's fragile body. On the morning of November 3rd, Scottie awoke unable or unwilling to eat the cinnamon toast Jillian had prepared. Both Jillian and Gary tried to force the food into his mouth, shoving the toast without mercy. Scottie repeatedly spat the food out, an act that ignited Gary's fury. He interpreted the refusal as defiance, not as a desperate signal of the toddler's injury and pain from ongoing abuse. In a violent surge, Gary began punching Scottie in the stomach and face. He seized the boy and dragged him into the bedroom, where both he and Jillian continued their assault. Jillian later recounted how Gary lifted Scottie by his back and slammed his head into the wall, leaving a noticeable dent. During this brutal beating, Scottie briefly lost consciousness and became unresponsive. To revive him, the couple subjected him to a cold shower. They managed to rouse him, returning him to his bedroom. Yet the horror was far from over. The next morning, Scottie's face was swollen and raw. Once again, Gary forced him to eat toast, but the child was unable to comply. Viewing this as further disrespect, Gary struck him with such force that Scottie fell from his chair. In a chilling display of control, Gary forcibly returned Scottie to the chair, then used electrical tape to bind his feet and arms to the chair's posts, leaving the toddler immobilized with his arms raised and defenseless. With Scottie trapped, Gary unleashed a brutal barrage of punches to his face and belly, forcing the child to vomit before slipping into unconsciousness once again. Amber Fellenbaum witnessed the savage attack, seeing the 3-year-old taped helplessly to the chair. Despite witnessing the violence, Amber took no action to intervene or call for help. Scottie succumbed to the relentless pain and trauma inflicted by a grown man wielding unrelenting fury against a tiny boy. Gary dismissed Scottie's unresponsiveness as yet another act of defiance. Like the day before, he and Jillian dragged the boy into a cold shower in a desperate attempt to revive him. When that failed, they plunged him into an ice bath. Still unresponsive, Scottie was stripped and dressed in fresh clothes, then placed on a deflated air mattress in the bedroom. Blood seeped from his nose, mouth, and ears as he lay there, not sleeping, but slowly dying. His 6-year-old brother bore silent witness to this tragedy. Meanwhile, Jillian Tate and Gary left the house, stepping into a world indifferent to the suffering inside. They visited a local car dealership, casually browsing vehicles for sale. Later, they ordered pizza to take home. Once back, they ate, shared intimacy, and then took a nap, acting as if nothing had shattered the fragile life within that home. When Jillian awoke at 7:30 p.m., she checked on Scottie and found him unresponsive. In a moment of panic, she screamed for help. Amber was the one to call 911. Police and first responders rushed to the scene, but it was already too late. Paramedics found Scottie lifeless, his body marred by cuts, bruises, and puncture wounds. Despite their desperate efforts to revive him, the damage was irreversible. They transported him to Brandywine Hospital in Calne, where nurses, overwhelmed by grief, wept over his condition. Scott Jacob McMillan was pronounced dead on November 4th at 7:45 p.m. Katie McDevitt, a first responder at the scene, later described the haunting image of finding the boy as one that would linger with her forever. In a heartfelt online tribute addressed to Scottie, she recalled the expressions of shock on the faces of those who saw him. She remembered the coldness of his small body, the vivid color of his hair, and the profound impact his short life had on her own. Her words conveyed sorrow and regret for the life cut tragically short and her inability to save him. She vowed never to forget Scottie, the little red-headed boy who would remain forever in her heart. Meanwhile, police and medical personnel turned their attention to the other children in the home. The 11-month-old girl was unharmed, but Scottie's older brother bore visible injuries. He was transported to Alfred I DuPont Hospital for specialized pediatric care. Both children were placed into protective custody as the investigation intensified. The police search of the home uncovered a chilling array of evidence: the whip, the curtain rod, the aluminum strip, and remnants of electrical tape. They documented the battered bedroom walls, scarred from when Scottie and his brother's heads had been slammed against them. The deflated air mattress where Scottie had died was also photographed, a silent witness to the horror. One telling detail emerged amid the evidence. Only a single photograph of little Scottie was found in the house, underscoring the neglect and erasure of his existence. Under questioning, Amber Fellenbaum, Jillian Tate, and Gary Lee Fellenbaum III each confessed their involvement in Scottie's fatal abuse. Amber admitted witnessing the violence but refrained from intervening until her delayed 911 call. Jillian Tate denied striking the boys with a closed fist, but acknowledged participating in beatings using a wooden spoon, frying pan, and the homemade whip. According to the police affidavit, in one horrific episode, Gary hung Scottie and his brother upside down by their feet, assaulting them while they dangled helplessly. Jillian revealed that she and Gary laughed during this cruel ordeal. She admitted witnessing the wounds and scars on both boys, but blamed Gary for the worst injuries, accusing him of punching the children and perpetrating domestic violence against her. Jillian also recounted how Gary had thrown Scottie against the wall with brutal force. A violent blow left a hole in the wall. In a chilling confession, Gary Lee Fellenbaum III admitted to beating Scott Jacob McMillan and his brother. He acknowledged that Scott was severely bruised and expressed regret that his violent actions had culminated in a tragic death. Under intense interrogation, Gary revealed he did not seek help when Scott became unresponsive, fearing repercussions from law enforcement and child protective services. He also claimed that none of this would have occurred if Scott had simply eaten his breakfast. On November 6th, both Gary and Jillian Tate were arrested, facing a staggering 16 charges. These included first-degree murder, third-degree murder, homicide, aggravated assault, and multiple related offenses. They were held without bail. The following day, Amber Fellenbaum was taken into custody, charged with 4 counts of child abuse. Her bail was set at $500,000, and she too remained behind bars. Chester County District Attorney Thomas Hogan opened his statement by declaring he was bound to a chair and mercilessly beaten. At one point, he was hung upside down by his feet and assaulted again. His head was driven through a wall. Even seasoned emergency room nurses, accustomed to grim scenes, wept upon seeing his battered body. The community recoiled in shock at the savage nature of this crime. The district attorney announced his intent to pursue the death penalty, citing 2 grave aggravating factors: Scott's tender age and the prolonged torture he endured. Investigators found no traces of alcohol or drugs influencing the perpetrators during the assaults. The prosecutor summed it up starkly: this was pure evil, an unspeakable act of depravity. The medical examiner ruled Scott's death a homicide caused by multiple blunt force traumas, which inflicted fatal internal injuries. For days, Scott suffered without medical aid until those wounds claimed his life. Despite her attorney's plea for a 3-year sentence, Common Pleas Judge William P. Mahoney sentenced her to 6.5 to 16 years in prison. That same month, Jillian Tate entered guilty pleas to third-degree murder, conspiracy to commit third-degree murder, child abuse conspiracy, and other charges. As part of her plea deal, she agreed to testify against Gary, effectively removing her eligibility for the death penalty. In court, Jillian begged for mercy. She confessed her guilt, admitting no excuse for her crimes. Yet she claimed Gary manipulated her, exploiting her mental health struggles, imprisoning her within her own home. With a heavy heart, she wished for a chance to reclaim her life, insisting that had she never met Gary, Scott would still be alive. Her repentance was clear. She longed to undo the horrors she was complicit in. Assistant District Attorney Michael Noon read a poignant letter from Scott's brother to Jillian. The letter condemned the household as a house of torture, where both boys suffered brutal abuse. The writer blamed their mother for standing by as they were harmed. The letter called Gary truly evil, nearly killing the author, and accused Jillian of being the reason Scott died. It expressed the bitter disappointment that parents, meant to protect, had become the source of pain. At the hearing, R's adoptive uncle spoke, reflecting on the grim choice between Scott, who died, and R, who survived but carries haunting memories. He described R's traumatic recollections, being hung from the ceiling as his mother checked his feet, confinement in locked rooms, and hiding basic bodily functions to avoid brutal punishment. These memories, filled with fear and confusion, continued to torment R. The uncle directly addressed Jillian, acknowledging her hardships but emphasizing parental responsibility. He reminded her of the many opportunities she had to seek help, yet chose to partake selfishly in the abuse of her children. Scott died alone on the floor. R witnessed it in isolation. The uncle warned that Gary might have ultimately killed R as well. These children were Jillian's responsibility, a duty she utterly failed to uphold. Judge William P. Mahoney delivered a scathing rebuke, suggesting that while Gary might fit the profile of a sociopath, Jillian's failure as a mother might be even more damning. He spoke of a grim reality where monsters walk among us, and mothers are meant to be protectors. Yet when a mother lacks that fundamental instinct, she may be worse than the psychopath she allows to harm her children. The judge made clear he departed from sentencing guidelines because no scenario could be more horrific, no betrayal more profound. He condemned the abdication of parental duty and the conspiracy to inflict such cruelty, calling it a wound on the very fabric of society. Jillian was sentenced to 42 to 94 years in prison. Meanwhile, Gary's trial faced multiple delays as he shuffled through a series of lawyers. One defense attorney claimed he was not competent to stand trial. A competency hearing became necessary, and once he was declared fit to stand trial, he launched an effort to invalidate his own confession. When that strategy failed, he altered his narrative, claiming ignorance of Scottie's death at the time of his interview. Yet detectives countered his claim with damning video evidence. At one hearing, he maintained that his punishment was limited to spanking, shifting blame for the severe injuries onto Amber Fellenbaum and Jillian Tate. Despite his repeated legal maneuvers, the trial date loomed ever closer. Just 2 weeks before the trial was set to begin, he struck a plea deal, avoiding the death penalty by pleading guilty to first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, aggravated assault, and related charges. Judge William P. Mahoney commended the district attorney's office for securing 3 convictions without proceeding to trial, sparing the surviving brother the trauma of testifying. He emphasized how the boy was spared from reliving the horrors he had already endured. The jurors, who would have faced the grisliest details the judge had ever encountered, were spared exposure to what he described as terrifying and revolting facts. Gary Lee Fellenbaum III received a life sentence without parole. In addition, he was handed 10 to 20 years for the aggravated assault on the older boy and other charges. He remains incarcerated at the SCI Huntington Unit in Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, Jillian Tate is serving her sentence at SCI Muncie in Lycoming County. Amber Fellenbaum has since been released on parole and is believed to be residing with family in Lancaster County. On November 12, 2014, Scottie's family held a private burial ceremony. The young boy was laid to rest clutching a Thomas the Tank Engine train, buried in a casket adorned with Thomas on its lid at Northwood Cemetery, Chester County, Pennsylvania. An investigation into Rainbow Elementary School's response revealed that staff had followed protocol thoroughly. Superintendent Kathy Tashner expressed the school's devastation over the boy's suffering. She detailed how the district used multiple communication methods, calls, written notices, and even a home visit to check on the children's absence. Despite these efforts, they were unaware of the boys' whereabouts, as Jillian Tate never disclosed their new location. The extended family of Scottie continues to grieve deeply. Tara, his paternal aunt, confessed her shock and disbelief, struggling to fathom how such cruelty could occur. She avoids dwelling on the haunting moment when Scottie must have realized no rescue was coming. Both maternal Aunt Kim and Tara sought custody of the surviving brother, Aaron. They reached an agreement that protects his privacy, recognizing his right to grow up with as much peace as possible. His identity and those caring for him remain confidential. In Scottie's memory, numerous candlelight vigils and memorials have been held, including a global online campaign. News of Scottie's murder stirred worldwide empathy, prompting many to rally around his surviving brother in hopes of aiding his healing. District Attorney Thomas Hogan voiced support for these efforts, acknowledging the unimaginable trauma the boy endured. He underscored the betrayal by those meant to protect him and the community's desire to help Scottie's brother rebuild his life. Beyond shedding tears and prayers, the community united in action to support the boy's recovery. A press release from Hogan's office confirmed that all donations would be safeguarded in a trust, dedicated solely to the child's benefit. Attorney Lawrence Persick established and manages this trust, overseeing how the funds are distributed to ensure proper use for the boy's welfare. However, a dispute arose between Persick and Scottie's family over the funds' use. While Persick advocates saving the money for college expenses, Scottie's aunt pressed for immediate support to address the boy's current needs. In January 2023, she requested $9,500 from the trust to cover trauma therapy, drum lessons, and a drum set to nurture his middle school band interest, after-hours martial arts classes for discipline, and a 4-week summer day camp. She specified that payments be made directly to organizations, emphasizing transparency and dismissing any personal gain. She noted that his PTSD exacerbates normal adolescent hormonal changes, leading to behavioral challenges. These activities, she argued, are vital for his social development and healing, though they come with financial costs the trust should cover. Attorney Persick refused to release the funds, insisting the trust was not intended for such expenses. Initially secretive about the trust's balance, he later disclosed donations had grown from roughly $38,000 to about $62,000. The aunt contended the trust was meant for his younger years to support healing through structured activities like sports and camps. Determined, she is pursuing legal avenues to challenge Persick's decision while continuing to provide support without the trust's aid. Her resolve remains firm as she explores further legal recourse to appeal the attorney's refusal, all while doing everything possible without access to the trust funds. In a poignant moment at Gary Lee Fellenbaum III's sentencing, Assistant District Attorney Michael Noon read a letter from the then 8-year-old surviving brother to Scottie. This innocent yet heartbreaking message captured the tragic essence of Scottie's brief life. An apology for failing to protect him and a bittersweet acknowledgement of justice served. The letter's final words reveal the cruel reality. Gary is behind bars, but Scottie lies in heaven, forever out of reach.